Hello, how's everybody doing today? This is Mickey. Over the last several weeks, I've done a couple videos on the new landscape masking and how to create adaptive presets for those new masking features that we have. Well, through those videos, I've gotten several emails asking, well, could you show us how to process a picture, maybe do a full edit using some of those new landscape features and other masking? And of course I'll do that. I love doing stuff like that. And you know what else I love? I love getting emails from the people who follow me, giving me criticism of my work or constructive criticism, and asking for things they'd like to see. I'll be glad to help out any way I can. Now, before we start, I just want to let you know I'm going to process the way I felt when I took the picture and what I found at the scene. And personally, I think I'm kind of a warm color kind of guy. I like kind of ethereal kind of effects, a soft warm glow in my photographs. So that's how I'll process this. And I have gotten constructive criticism from some of my followers saying I don't like the color, it's too stark, it's too bright, and I completely understand their feelings. So if you have anything to say about the photographs, I really welcome any kind of constructive criticism or help along the way to make my photograph better, and I hope that what we go through today helps your photograph come along too. Alright, let's dig right in on this picture. Right, when I start processing a photo, the first thing I like to do is kind of get everything straightened up, lens distortion, my cropping, everything fixed before I start processing the basics of the photograph. To start out with, we can hit our R key, or we can click on the crop tool here, and we're going to hover on the outside and get our horizon straight. And it looks like we have a little distortion, making the horizon not perfectly straight. And we can go over here to lens corrections, go to manual, grab the distortion slider, and just start sliding it till you look like you've got that little arc out of your horizon. We'll come back and look at it. That's pretty straight right here. Now I'm going to grab the bottom and bring this up to increase my crop, and then slide it over to the right just a little bit. About right there is where I want my photograph crop to be, and hit the enter key, and that sets our crop. The next thing I want to do is get rid of any distractions in the photograph on the edges, top or bottom, that I think would distract my viewers. In this little area right here, I'd like to get rid of that. So I'm going to go over to the remove tool right here. We're going to use generative AI, and we're going to grab this little area right here. Be sure to get the reflection if you have any around water. Otherwise, you're going to get rid of your object and the reflection is still going to be there. That's going to kind of throw your viewers. Alright, we hit our enter key and get rid of this area using the generative AI in Lightroom. Alright, looks like it did a pretty good job. So the next thing I want to do is I want to bring in any denoise that will help me make this picture look a little better. Now I shot this at 6400, so there's going to be some noise in here. If we zoom in at 300 and we'll go around and look at the bird here, we can see we have a lot of noise in the ground, a lot of noise in the grass. I typically like to use the DxO product Prime, raw prime, and I also use Topaz Photo AI, but this time we're just going to use the noise reduction in Lightroom, and it's pretty good. I'll have to admit, depending on what kind of photograph it is, it can do just as good a job as a lot of these third-party products. Alright, so we're going to go to our basic panel, going to go down to detail, and we're going to click Denoise. Now what it's going to do is it's going to make a view of what it looks like with the denoise level applied, and we can click on this little minus on the magnifying glass and pick an area that we want to look at. So we want to look at this area that we looked at before, and at this point we want to move our denoise slider back and forth till we get just the right amount of noise removed without taking away some of the focus, because you know, as you denoise, you are also taking away some of your sharpness. So we'll just try 40%. That looks pretty good. Maybe we'll bring it up to about 50 and see how that looks. I think that's going to do it. Let's look at the grass a little bit and see if that... let's try a little more, just because the grass is going to give us a little problem. Alright, I think that looks good. And we're just going to click Enhance. And what that does, it creates a brand new DNG file, and that will have the denoise attached to it, and that's the part of the photograph, or the DNG file, that we're going to use to process further. Alright, our photograph's processed complete. You can look and see it looks really good, hardly any noise at all, and we still have all our sharpness, pretty much all our sharpnesses that we had in the beginning. What we want to do next is to start working on the very basics of the photograph in the basic panel. So I'm going to go to the basic panel, and I like to use the Adobe Creative or Adaptive Color Profile. This is a good starting point using this profile rather than like Adobe Color or Adobe Landscape. I don't think it does as good. As you can see, this was taken at 7 in the morning and we had a lot of color in the sky, but it just doesn't do any good using these other ones. So I'm going to use Adaptive Color, and as you can see, it's really bringing out the sky. Now, because of the profile that we used, it's also bringing out some dust spots. So let's go back into our cleanup tool, to our remove a little band-aid, and we're going to turn on visualize spots, or you can use the shortcut key of A, and it turns it into more or less a black and white mask, and we can see those spots real good. So we just want to come over here and click, and click this little spot, which I believe was a bird, but we really can't tell. He's more of a nuisance than something that will add to the photograph. Now over here, I also want you to look. This is kind of like a luminance mask, and we can see that we have some bright areas in the sky, and that's something we want to take into consideration when we start working on processing the color of the sky. All right, for now, let's go back out to the basic panel. And as you can see, we now have a red dot under our basic. What this is telling us is that our masks are not in sync. We had an AI mask that we put on for some of the denoise, and we used AI for the profile that we just put on. Because of that, they're really not in sync. Very easy to fix. We're in the basic panel. You just click on this update button right here. It clears up, and now we can see all our masks, and our profile is in sync. Next, we just want to start hitting our sliders in our basic panel to make our photograph a little more as a good starting point with our tonality adjustments. I'm going to bring the exposure up just a little tiny bit. Highlights I'm going to bring down so we can bring some more into the sky. Bring out the shadows just a little bit. Add a little bit of whites to help those shadows. And let's see what blacks will do anything. Maybe just a little bit. And add a little clarity in there to help us add a little depth to the photograph. We'll look at vibrance, and I think what we're going to leave that alone, and we're going to rely on our masking in these different areas to bring out our colors and our tonality. So with all that done, the next thing that we need to do is we want to apply our landscape masking. Now we can do that by clicking on our masking tool here and clicking on landscape. And when it does that, it will go out and find all the different areas. There are up to 7 areas it can define, and it's found 4: sky, vegetation, water, natural ground. If you don't want to use this, you could create your own preset which will grab all 7 areas instead of these 4 and let you see what it finds with that. Basically, it's the same thing. It just covers all the 7 areas of your mask. So I'm going to cancel out of this. I'm going to go over here to my preset and click on and landscape mask. As you can see, it makes the masks immediately: sky, mountains, architecture, vegetation, water, artificial, and ground. You also notice there's an exclamation mark on these masks because there is nothing in the photograph that correlates to this type of mask. To get rid of these real quick, you just hit the 3 dots and delete all empty masks. Alright, so these are the 4 that we're going to stick with for now, and of course we're going to add more masks to this as we go along. Let's first evaluate the masks that we do currently have. So we look at the sky mask. That looks like a good one. I want to keep that one. Vegetation, that one is fairly good, but it's going to require some cleanup, so I want to keep that one. Next is water. This one is a mess. I probably don't want to do that. I'll probably hand mask the water instead of relying on this. So I'm going to turn the little eyeball off on this, and I'm going to go to natural ground, and it's covering just about everything. Vegetation, with kind of a hit and miss in the foreground. So I really don't want to use this one either. So I'm going to hit the eyeball. So I do this, I hit the eyeball just to let me know that I want to get rid of these. So now I have 2 masks and 2 I want to get rid of. And all I do is click on the 3 dots and say delete water. Click on the 3 dots here, delete natural ground. So now we can start concentrating on the mask that we have and mask that we want to build to further enhance our photograph. When I process my photographs, I always like to start at the top and work my way down. So that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to start with sky, and I want to bring the highlights down because this is about the color that we were getting. Maybe add a little contrast. And as you can see, we do have these light areas in here, and we really want to kind of enhance those. So I'm going to grab a radial mask, and I want this area right here enhanced. I'm going to start way off the side, and I want the dot where this is the brightest area of the mask, and it falls off here, and it falls off here. I just want the fall off, and I want it rather narrow. I'm going to move this across this area here, and I just want to add just a little bit of exposure and maybe a little shadow. And what we want to do is bring up that mask so it enhances that part of the sky just very little bit, because there was layers to this sky. So that's what we want to work on here. Next, I want to create another radial mask. I'm going to just look at this bright spot here. Might want to bring the highlights down a little bit. It's starting to get just a little too hot. And we can even look at the color and see if there's any color we could add in here. And it's pretty bright, so we're not going to see a lot. But that looks pretty good to me. We kind of enhance this layer. If we could, we might even, let's look at that. Let's grab another radial gradient and throw it in right here. And with this one, we're going to bring the highlights down about like this. So now we're seeing those different layers of color, different layers of amber. Let's put a little white in there too, about like that. So if we look at our mask now with the sky, looks like we have some good texture in there. And over the whole sky mask like this, we might even go to effects and see what clarity looks like in there. So it adds a little bit to it. We'll stick with that. Alright, the next area that we want to look at will be the vegetation. Now remember, we had a vegetation mask for this, but it's not real clean. I'm going to take my opacity down a little bit on my mask so I can see through it a little better, about like this. And I'm going to click on my little thumbnail and hit subtract. We're going to subtract with a brush. I'm leaving everything off, and I'm leaving feather and flow up at high. I know this area here, these areas are not really the vegetation. I'm looking for the gold vegetation up here. That's the only thing I want. So I want to remove all these areas of the mask that really aren't in that golden vegetation, because that's the only place I want to affect. And we could always add it back if we guess it wrong. Right now we're just kind of roughing this out. This area here is not part of the grass, and it's not part of the vegetation I want to affect with my mask, so I'm going to kind of take it out right here. About like this. Okay, with what we have now, it's probably the closest I think we can get with a good vegetation mask. So let's take our tone and turn it up a little bit. We want to brighten this up. Add a little contrast to it. Let's see what our shadows do. That looks good. Maybe a little whites. Yeah, it's getting too bright. We're going to kind of enhance this with masks, so I don't need it completely all the way up. This will probably hit with a supplemental mask. Right now I'm just concentrating on this area right here. And this actually had a little more golden color to it. So if you come down here to color and click on our color swatch, we can start choosing more color. So as you can see here, I kind of like this golden color here that we've applied. And then we can affect the saturation. Let's just take it to about right here. So if we look at this mask right now, we can see we've gone from this to this. So it's brought that nice sun golden sun in on our grassy area. The next thing I want to do is kind of enhance these areas. You can see that it's taller grass right in these areas here, and those areas are going to require a little more light. So we're going to add a mask, add a brush, and we're going to have the flow way down, probably 10 to 20%. We'll leave it at about 15%. And I'm going to have auto mask on, and we're just going to freehand this across this area that has the brightest straw. And we're just going to brush real light. As you can see, we're seeing just real light purple in there. And we're just going to hit these areas that have a highlight kind of area in them. Just like this. And this is where the sun is kind of lighting up the top of the grass. Once we get that mask in place, we can then grab our tone slider and bring that up just a little bit. Maybe add a little golden light to it, about like this. Bring up the shadows. So now you can see, if we look at this mask, this is with the mask off, with the mask on, mask off, and mask on. Now we have our light in place, we can then start touching up other areas that we might want to affect. So this area here, like this. And then we have our amount slider that we can start bringing it down if it's just a little too much. Maybe add a little clarity to it, about like this. And then come back to our amount slider for the whole effect and find it just where we want, because we don't want it to be like crazy. So we're just going to bring it down just a little bit. And when we look at the before and after, it should be a very subtle effect. Nothing that's just glaring in your eye, just a real subtle effect. Okay, so let's zoom in a little bit on the photograph, bring it down, and we want to concentrate on this line up here now. So let's grab a new mask. We don't want to use the same one. With the brush, really low flow, and we're just going to brush in this area right up here, right across the top of the grass, just like this. There's some over here, some up here. It's just real light. As you can see, the mask, the purple mask, is very, very faint, and that's the way I want it. Right. Once you get it in place, then just hit our tone, bring it up a little bit, bring up the shadows a little bit, maybe add just a little gold touch to it, like this. As you can see, we'll turn this one on and off, about like this. Might want to bring the amount slider and bring it down just a little bit. Looks a little heavy-handed. Before, after, before, and after. So now if we look at our grassy field, you can see if we turn all the masks off and on, it has a little more depth to it. Now in between this fine grass here and this fine grass here, we have these tops of like some type of wheat. So I want to grab another brush, and I'm going to just cover this area with a hand brush mask. This is in between the two highlighted spots we put in. And in here we might want to add a little less light and maybe some clarity so we can bring out these little tops of the grass. So I'm going to go to tone. I'm going to bring highlights down, maybe exposure down just a little bit. And we're going to take the effect and grab the clarity and bring that up. And you can see how we're bringing out the tops of those that grass. All right, now let's concentrate on the front part of this grass here, and it's in shadow. So we're going to grab, again, the brush. I'm going to bring the flow up just a little bit more for this, and we're going to hit these areas that are dark, because this is where the light is not getting all the way down in the grass, and we need to enhance that so that we can get a more depth look to the grass. Go to tone. We're going to bring the exposure down a little bit, like that, and let's bring the highlights down. Maybe add blacks in there a little bit. So now by bringing the shadows in here and our highlights at the top with this whole grassy field, we get a better kind of depth. All right, now in these areas here, we can, let's grab another brush, and we're just going to kind of run it through this area here And we'll just increase the exposure just a little bit. A few shadows. The color is about right. I mean, you can check the color, see if it could add a little bit more gold to it, about like this. And we got the same thing going here. We could just go ahead and continue with the same brush painting in right here. Use your amount slider to see what looks best. And it looks pretty good. I'm going to grab my brush, and this one I'm going to paint in kind of like the dirt ledge that's right here, and I'm just going to roughly paint it in because we're going to highlight this a little bit and bring just a little light to this dirt area in between the two grassy fields. There's actually like a little canal water feature that's running through here, and that's why we have this ledge. So once I have that all painted in, let's grab our tone, take that up just a little bit, about like this. Alright, what we're going to do now is look at the bottom portion of our photograph. So let's reduce it to a fit and take a look at here. So we have a water feature running through here, this water that we want to do something with, and we want to add some contrast to the ground, the muddy areas, to make that pop just a little bit more. We also want to probably add a little mask on each one of the birds and brighten them up just a little tiny bit. First off, I'm going to go after the little green here. I want to increase that, so I'm going to grab a brush and turn the flow up about 50%, and we're just going to roughly brush over this green. And what we're going to use is point color to really differentiate between the mud and the green. And we'll put a little over here too, because there's some green in here. Then we're going to go down to point color, and we're going to select our color selector, and we want to pick a green area. That way the only areas that will be affected will be the green areas. So even though the mask color covered mud and everything else, the only areas that will take the color change are those areas that are green. So we're going to increase the saturation, and let's increase the luminance just a little bit and bring out those green areas. Real simple way to using a brush mask and then use a point color to kind of filter out just the color that you want to affect. The next thing we want to look at is the water. We want to add a little clarity and add a little color to the water because it's reflecting the skies. So we want to make a mask of this water area. To do that, let's try using an object mask. And we're just going to lightly color in the area. We want to be kind of specific because this is kind of a rambling area of the picture. Plus, the color of the water is a lot like the color of the mud. So we're going to have to probably cover up more than we usually do and do some cleaning up of the mask after it selects the object. Right, so we got a little bit of selection there. So we're going to go to add. I'm going to select objects again. I'm going to do the same thing. See if we can get this added in. That's looking a lot better. Go down here, another select object. Let's see if we can get this area in here. And then probably after this, we can just do cleanup with the brush. Yeah, let's do that. So we're going to add with a brush. We're going to have the flow, I'm going to say all the way, 100% with a feather all the way. And we're just going to paint in that area of the water that the select object didn't get. Right here, a little over here. We'll make our brush a little smaller. Let's come right in here like this. Pick up that area. And then what I want to do is I want to reduce my flow to about 20%. And because we have some pretty harsh edges to here, I just want to use the edge of my brush, the feathered edge of my brush, and lightly touch up the edges around the water so it gives a smoother transition between the mud and the water. And that way it looks a little more natural when we start adding color in here. So we just want to brush around the edges, like a smaller brush, brush around the edges to give it a kind of a nice transition. About like that. Alright, so now I want to add a little exposure to the water. I want to go to my color swatch and I want to add some golden light to it, and we could increase the saturation till we get what we want. Remember, we're going to do the final color tuning with our amount slider, so let's bring it more towards yellow than the green. We're going to give it about that much color, about like this. We've got some color in there now, and now we can fine tune it with our amount slider, see how much gold we want in the water. We'll say about right there for now. Now we have to make this look a little more realistic because this area right here is blocking the sun. So this should not have the yellow in it like this part of the water. So what we're going to use is an intersecting mask. So we're going to go up here to our mask, choose intersect mask with linear gradient. And we're going to apply the linear gradient from the bottom up. That way we'll get more yellow, more gold light at the bottom of the water while it dissipates or disappears up top. So let's drag this up like this. Remember, an intersecting mask only affects that area of your primary mask, that first mask we put in place. So we'll make the mask pretty wide because we want the gradient to be real smooth. Like this. I'll bring this down a little bit. We'll move this up and get a better look. Now let's go to our amount slider. Let's see, before, after, before, and after. So you see we do have some color from the sky in this water here, and then it kind of goes away in this area right here. Alright, so let's add a little contrast to the mud now. We're going to grab another brush, and we're going to go to our tone and bring it down just a little bit. And what we want to do is go in these dark areas of the mud and darken the shadows, so we have more contrast in these areas. And again, we can use our amount slider after we get our masks in place. Let's increase the flow to about 72%. That way we only have to make one stroke across the area, about like this. Like I said, we can then readjust it with our amount slider. But you can tell we're adding some darkness to the shadow areas so we have more depth in our foreground here. Let's go around the edge of the water here a little bit, like this. And then we can increase or decrease the amount with our slider here. Now if we look at our before, after, before, and after, it just gives us a little better look at the mud, like these are actually deep crevices and the sun's not getting to them, so it just adds more depth to the photograph. Following now, we want to add a little brightness to the birds, not a lot, just a little bit. Let's bring the birds more close in, and we're going to use a object selection, and we're just going to color these birds just like this. I have it selected, give it a little clarity, maybe just a little touch of highlight, about like that. Now if we hit the N key, it'll give us another mask of the one we just used, which is object. So I'm going to hit N, and it automatically gives me a new mask selection, our object, because that is the last one that we used. We go to effects, give it a little clarity, a little highlight, N for our next mask, which is the object select. Go to our effects, a little clarity, and just a little highlight. Last one, N for another mask. We'll go to our clarity again. Maybe just a little touch in the highlights. Brighten up our birds so now we can see each bird individually. It's just a little bit brighter, not a lot, just gives it a little more clarity with our birds. Alright, so let's now take a look at the reflections in the water. We want to improve those a little bit. So again, we're going to go to a brush, we're going to give it just a little bit of exposure, and we're going to give it about 48 on the clarity. And let's bring the flow down to about 50%. And now we just want to paint in the water right in front of the birds, just like this. That brightens up the reflections a little bit and makes the water look a little more realistic. And we'll hit this area right here where there's shadows from the mud, or reflections from the mud, and in this area, reflections from the background here. So if we look at the before, after, before, and after, it gets a nice little effect right there in the water. Now let's zoom back out on our photograph, and this is where I like to just turn off all the masks, and I'm going to go to my clarity slider, and I'm going to turn this down a little bit. If we go too much, see, it gets a little too ethereal, too hazy, so I'm going to come up to about right here, about like that, and that's the effect. I just like that glowing effect. You can look at your highlights or your exposure, but probably dehaze is probably going to be your friend here. Bring a little dehaze in to brighten it up, clarity to just give it a wash over glow, and you could bring the texture up to bring some of the texture out of that grass up at the top. Alright, so if we look, we don't have any mask to turn off and on. If we turn this, we get a lot of change. We really can't see just what we did there, but it's looking good. Now I want to put a vignette in place. We're going to reduce the size of the photo just a little bit, Control or Command minus, and we're going to grab a radial mask. We're going to start in the center, and we're going to get really big, about like this, and then we're going to hit invert. Now let's bring the picture size back up, Command or plus, and we're going to turn the tone down so we get some dark edges to the photograph, because this is kind of a moody morning picture. And then we can protect some of these highlights that got too dark by cranking up the highlight slider. That takes some of that darkness off the edges, and we can crank up the shadow slider to take some out of the shadow areas. So now if we look at the before, after, before, and after, it's not quite as harsh once we protect the highlights and the shadows. Now there's one other thing I like to do, and it kind of sounds counterintuitive, but it really helps out, and that's to put a little spot right on the main subject area of the photograph. And a little spot is just going to be another radial mask, like this. And I'm going to make it about that big. I'm going to spin it around. And this just draws the viewer's eyes in just a little better. And this is going to be a very slight touch. So we're going to bring it up about like this. Maybe add a little bit to the shadows, about like that. And as you can see, before, after, before, and after. So we have a good vignette right here. But just to help it out a little bit more, let's put another really light spot right in here. And that might be too much. Just bring it down a little bit with your amount slider. Give it another look right here. Perfect. Well, there you have it. There's the final picture. If you're like me, there's probably a dozen more things you could do, but for now we'll just call this good. And we can look at our before, after, and after. So I hope this helped out. I tried to show how we could use adaptive color to bring the picture out great from the beginning, and dodging and burning with masking, using selective color, using our radial and linear and object mask to select certain areas so that we could bring more color and contrast in. Also how we can use point color to use a mask, use point color to just affect those colors that are within the mask. Also the use of radial mask for selective vignetting, and how to use a spot to bring extra attention to your photograph. And finally, just the use of light and color with just a little negative clarity to add a little mood to the picture. I know this is getting kind of long in the tooth, but I'm just glad if you hung out and watched the whole thing. If anybody has any questions, please don't hesitate to give me a call or drop me a note, and I'll do whatever I can to help you out. And as usual, I can't wait to see you guys later.